everyone. I haven't made a video about reading for 6 months, which I knew it had been a while, but I didn't realise it had been quite that long. I looked back to see when my last video was, and yeah, 6 months. This channel started out as a booktube channel. Before I started making authortube content, I made booktube content, and I know that I primarily make authortube content now, but up until, well, 6 months ago, I still made monthly reading wrap-up videos, and the last one I did, I didn't do it on that monthly schedule. I made the video saying, this is just the books I've read lately, and that's what I'm going to do from now on. I'll read a few books, and when I've got a few to talk about, I'll make a video. And here we are 6 months later. Basically, I fell into a huge reading slump, and I think there's 2 reasons for that. Number one, it's just been so busy, and I know I've been saying that on this channel for a while, but it's the last year, slightly more than a year, probably particularly since last May, but then it's really ramped up since January, and so I have just been at 100 miles an hour, and so having the time but also the routines to sit and read, it just hasn't happened with family, moving, book projects, teaching. It's just, it's been a lot. So mostly I haven't had the time. I had one particular book that I got a bit sort of stuck on, which I think happens when you're in a reading slump. You get to a book that isn't kind of a page turner for you, and then you just stop. That's what happened. It was actually a great book, but it wasn't one that was easy, you know? And also the fact that I'd removed that monthly, you're going to have something to talk about, pressure, and my chair's clicking. I try and sit really still so it doesn't creak, but yeah, let's just assume that we've established that you know, there'll be chair noises. Yeah, what am I talking about? I'm so tired. So where was I? Oh yes, not having that monthly pressure, good pressure. I don't think that you should force yourself, but that kind of, I need to have read something so I can make that video. Removing that, I think, contributed too. So here we are. I'm going to talk about the books that I've read over the last 6 months, and then from there on I'll read loads, right? I'll update you more regularly. Yeah, can't make any promises. Right, so the first book that I read, this is a great one to start on, is The Saviour's Champion by Jenna Moreci. Now, I have wanted to read this book for so long. When I started getting into AuthorTube, Jenna Moreci was one of the first AuthorTubers that I followed. I'm sure that most AuthorTubers watch her. She's the cyborg queen, right? And she was in the process of writing, publishing. I forget exactly when I joined the community, but the book was rumbling through the process. And so I followed her through that, and then in creating The Saviour's Sister, and it sounded great. I wanted to read it, just never got round to it. So I got it on Kindle and molting. Whenever I read that in May, we're going back to May now, and I really enjoyed it. So The Saviour's Champion is a fantasy book in which the saviour, who's she's like the kind of almost like the queen, the ruler, that's the word I'm looking for, of this land, and she is shiny and magical. And when she comes of age, a tournament is held to win her hand in marriage. And so there is a group of characters who are all coming to fight for the right to marry her. And so you get all of the kind of characters' interactions and the drama. I really enjoyed it. It's very fast-paced, it's bloody and sweary and, you know, raw. It's a real page turner. You want to know what's going to happen. I found it a really fun fantasy book, and I think it was predictable in parts, and but that didn't matter. And I think that there were a few tropes in it, but they were good tropes. To be fair, she talks about tropes a lot on her channel, and the sort of good ones and the bad ones. And I think that she chose really good ones. It worked really well. It was a fun read. If you like fantasy and you want something that, you know, it made me laugh, and it was just great. It was fun and a page turner, and, you know, I think that's great. And yeah, do you know what? I've put 3 stars on my Goodreads, which is not true. I'm going to update that to 4 because it was definitely a 4-star read. I have great memories of it. I'd definitely read it again if I wanted, like, just that kind of, I don't mean to say easy read, because I don't think it's like an easy read. I just think it's like a fun read. So yeah, I liked it. I would recommend. The next book that I read was Midnight by Jacqueline Wilson. I include in my books I read the books that I have read to my kids. So this was a bedtime book for my middle child, who's the one. I don't include the books I read to my 5-year-old, because you do not need to hear my review of Mr. Tickle on a weekly basis, and Mr. Quiet, and all of the Mr. Men. And my eldest, he reads by himself. So it's the books I read with my middle child. And she loves Jacqueline Wilson. She's wild about her. So we read this book together, and it was interesting. Jacqueline Wilson is generally, you know, a gritty author who writes books for children that don't steer away from things that are dark or uncomfortable. And that's why I think lots of people love her. Midnight, I just felt, was different to her other books. It's really quite dark in its atmosphere. So there's a girl who has like a strained relationship with her brother. They used to be very close, they're not anymore. She has like a friendship group, but she's not super close to them. And then a new girl joins the school, and she's just fascinated by her, and they become really, really good friends. And you have the twin stories of her brother kind of them kind of having experiences or adventures that are quite dark and scary, and he frightens her and things, and she really mourns the old relationship and kind of this what's going on here relationship between them, also a bit strained with her parents, and then this new relationship with the friend, and kind of all of this comes together. I didn't like it as much as her other books. Generally, I really enjoy reading Jacqueline Wilson. I think it was really unusual. I think if you or your child are into something darker, I think they'll like it. It had like side stories about fairies, which was really cool. Just sort of a bit mystical, a bit, yeah, it was just unusual. And in that respect, I really liked it, but wasn't my favourite. So a good book, but for me, not one of my favourite Jacqueline Wilsons. I've given it 3 stars, which I think is about right. And I read that in June. To be fair, I probably would have read that over the course of several months, because we go slow on books. The next one that I read in the last 6 months was The Thursday Murder Club. I think I got this from a charity shop. I don't have it anymore. I think I re-charity shopped it. Quite often do that with fiction. Unless I know it's a book I'm going to read again, I tend to just re-charity shop it. And yeah, I tend to keep non-fiction. Did I say I get fiction? I don't know if I got those the wrong way around. I'm doubting myself. I move on the fiction, I keep the non-fiction. Anyway, The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. It's obviously been talked about an awful lot. I have friends who've really enjoyed it. I thought it would be nice to read something cosy and super popular. There were things I really liked about it. So I enjoy books with older characters, and I think that older people aren't main characters enough. I think that usually main characters in books are kind of my age or younger, and having, you know, older people and a cast that is predominantly older, I just really, really love that in a book. So yeah, really enjoyed that. I thought that his characters were really, you know, really just well written. I don't know, I like the characterization. I just couldn't quite get into the plot. For me, it was one of those where I didn't really care who done it. if you know what I mean. Sometimes you read a crime, a mystery, and you just think, oh, it doesn't matter. So I think that while I was enjoying the writing style and the coziness, I think that the actual story for me just didn't do it. I know lots of people enjoy this book, and I think it is a sort of pleasant, obviously it's a crime, so, but you know, just an easy book to read, but not, again, I don't mean that, I don't know if that sounds derogatory when you say it's an easy read. I don't know, but yeah, I think it's just a pleasant read, but for me, just not my favourite, really. And that one I gave 3 stars on Goodreads. The next book that I read was Philomena. It's The Lost Child of Philomena Lee. So I'm looking at my phone when I look down. I've got Goodreads open. A Mother, Her Son, and a 50-Year Search by Martin Sixsmith. I picked this up in a charity shop. I just like the look of it. That's all I can say. I've since passed it on. And Philomena is, there was a film of it, I haven't seen it. It's a story about an Irish girl who is pregnant and goes to like a home for unmarried mothers, has the baby, and then the baby is adopted. She doesn't have any control over that. And then it kind of follows the life of the child, and then, you know, their paths throughout their lives. And with this book, I loved the story of Philomena. I have Irish heritage, and so I do enjoy a Irish set book. And I really was, you know, my heart hurt for her character. I mean, it's a true story, so I just really was gripped by her part of the story, but less so by the sons for a lot of it. I think the parts that were to do with their relationship, I think it's just that I wanted to read her and not so much him, because I just didn't, you know, just warm to his character as much, I think, or I don't know, yeah, I didn't find him so readable. So it's a heartbreaking story. It's beautiful, it's sad. I did really enjoy it. I gave it 4 stars. I did really, really enjoy it. I just didn't enjoy his narrative quite as much, but that's being critical, because overall I liked the book. The next book that I read, so this was in October. So to give you a sense, Philomena I finished in July, and the next one I finished in October. So here's the reading slump, which coincides very much with me working on Secret Seagrass Meadows and the summer holidays and all of the mayhem that happened. We moved. This is like mayhem season. And the book that I picked up to read, and I am a person who doesn't have more than one book on the go. So I can't go, oh, I don't fancy this one, I'll pick up another one. I've chosen this one and I shall finish it. And the book was Fingers in the Sparkle Jar by Packham. And I'm so sort of torn on this book, because I really, really loved it in some ways, but it was a reading slump book for me. So as in, I didn't pick this book up. When I did, I really enjoyed it, but I wasn't motivated to pick it up. I did also not have a great deal of time to invest in reading. So it was the two things, and it was a great book, and I don't know if it was my headspace, I don't know if it was the fact that when I read it, I'd just read a couple of pages, so I didn't get a chance to sort of get into it, but it took me, what is that, 3 months to read it. It's not a long book. It's really good, so I don't want to give it I gave it 4 stars, but for me, like I said, the criticism is it wasn't a book that I found page-turnery. That said, I thought it was stunning. His writing style is beautiful. It's very clear from his writing, and I know that he's been really vocal about the fact that he's autistic, but just the way he wrote about his kind of, the way that he thinks was just beautiful, and the way other people reacted to him and his social interactions. I just, as someone who I'm not diagnosed, but I would be extremely surprised if I'm not autistic, and many members of my family, including my kids, to read a book by someone autistic, written in that way, was so beautiful. His relationship with wildlife and the environment, which is something I am passionate about too, was just beautiful to read as well. Just being on this kind of journey with this journey, I can't believe I used that word, story, narrative, with this guy as he navigates this, you know, his life. And I think the thing that made it hard for me to pick up is that it chops and changes timeline a lot. So I find that sometimes quite hard, because I pick the book up and go, oh, where are we? Right, oh, okay. And he also shifts perspective. He writes in first person and third person. And so I think that was part of why I struggled, along with being really busy. But it's a beautiful book. Very much would recommend. As I say, it was a book that was part of, it didn't send me into a slump, it was sort of part of the experience. So I finished that, and then I read a book called The Snow Rose. That was fairly recent, finished that end of October, by Lulu Taylor. And The Snow Rose is about a woman who is on the run. You don't really know why. She's like disguised herself. She has a daughter. She's gone off to live in this house as like a house sitter. She's left her husband, and she's, you know, she has a friend who knows where she is. Sorry, doesn't know where she is, but has her phone number. And aside from that, she's got no contact with her past, and she is obviously really traumatized by something. And then you follow her in this house and sort of meeting a few people in the community, and this whole story unravels. And I was surprised where it went. I think that was the thing. I don't want to spoil it, but you get to a point in the book where you're thinking, okay, this is like really mysterious, this like creepy house, and what has she done, or what has she had done to her? What's going on? And then it takes a turn, and you're like, oh, okay, this book is this now. And she ends up involved in this community, and I think it got a little bit stranger at that point. I enjoyed it. It was a fun read. I read it in a few days, which after the Chris Packham book was lovely. I read it on holiday. Yeah, it was just, I would say, brilliant up until the turning point of the book, at which point I went, really? Okay. And then there were some odd parts of that. Yeah. If you've read it, I'd be interested to know what you thought. I don't want to say too much without spoilers. I did enjoy it. It was fun, but yeah. Then I read Lost and Found by Jacqueline Sheehan. I have that. It's next to me because my mum wants to read it, and I've got it there to give to her. Look at that. I read that. I finished that recently. I enjoyed this. It's apparently part of a series, I realised when I put it on Goodreads. It's by Jacqueline. I said that, didn't I? Jacqueline Sheehan. It's part of the Rocky Pellegrino series. I think that's right. My mother-in-law gave it to me, said she'd enjoyed it, and she's a big dog lover, so books about dogs often we pass between us. And it's about a woman whose husband dies in the first few pages. She tries to give him CPR. She's really kind of hurt and traumatised by the... Oh no, I said dog. Here's the dog. She heard me from all the way upstairs. This woman is really sort of, traumatised by the experience. And I'm sorry about the tippy-tappy claws. She gets the opportunity to go and work on an island as an animal control officer. She was a psychologist, psychotherapist, I forget. And she goes off to kind of recover, basically. And she gets really involved in the community and the animals of the area. And a dog is hurt, and she's called in, and she ends up looking after this dog. And it's the story of her and the dog, which was... that side of things really great, and I enjoyed it, and her sort of relationship with her husband and her sort of mourning, that was really really great. But then again, it took a turn. I think I can say a little bit without spoilers, that basically the dog has been shot by an arrow. So the book has this whole area where it goes into archery, and the archery side of things I just found a bit strange. I don't know. I think I just found that a bit unbelievable. And for me, it's one of those books that you end up with and then they did it, and aha, it was me. And for me, it's one of those, and that's not my kind of book. I know some people really enjoy that, not for me. So again, it was fun. It wasn't a bad book, but my criticism is that I just found that the archery subplot and then the characters that sort of came in with that, and then the denouement, for me was a bit just unbelievable. But the actual character and all of that, there were some odd bits that I thought would build more, and some relationships that I thought would become more, or like more would be made of her relationship with her husband other than just sort of her feelings. I don't know. But yeah, you know, it was fun. And then the last book that I read, I finished this recently, How to Be a Dad, The Ultimate Guide to Pregnancy, Birth and Dirty Nappies by Oscar Duke. My friend Laura passed this on to me. She gives me books to read. If she comes across a print book that she wants to have an opinion on, she gives it to me. So she gave it to me and was like, I want you to read this. Okay. Because we're both into pregnancy and birth, and she wanted my opinion on it. And I really thought it was very, very good. I enjoyed it very much. I have to say, if you're expecting a new baby in the family and you want like a partner's guide, I thought this was brilliant. I've read others over the years. In fact, if you were pregnant and you wanted a good guide, I think you could still read this and really get a lot from it. Oscar Duke is a doctor, and so he gives like the medical side of things. It's all very evidence-based. He also gives his personal experiences, and I felt it was the right balance of medicine and science and experience, and you know, giving people space for their own preferences. And I thought it was very fair and very balanced. And sometimes these kinds of books can be I guess because I'm someone that's into like what people would call like crunchy parent. I hate that. I'm like a crunchy mum. You know, with breastfeeding and baby wearing and co-sleeping and gentle parenting and all of the stuff, sometimes you read books about pregnancy and they are derogatory towards those choices, and I thought this was very, here's the evidence, this is the different choices, and that this is why people might do it, and here's where you can get support and information, and that's exactly what I want to read. And the other thing is that I've previously read a partner's guide that I felt was really derogatory towards men. I felt it was condescending and it really upset me. This I just thought was very just written with information and written respectfully. And in that respect, I thought it was very good. Isn't that terrible? I'm like, it was respectful, therefore it's good. No, an excellent book. I gave it 5 stars. I thought that it was brilliant. If you're looking for a dad's guide, a partner's guide, even a pregnant person's guide to pregnancy and all the sort of options and medical things, even goes into things like genetic testing because he has albinism, and so it's something that he has personal experience of. So that was really interesting, and he doesn't shy away from the science, which for me definitely ticks the boxes. So would recommend that one. I enjoyed all of these books. If I've said negative things about them, I hope I've made it clear that I thought they were all decent. Yeah, I just think you have to be critical. That is the point, after all. This has been rather rambly as I go over 6 months of books. I hope to talk about books sooner. I'm currently reading Wolf Hall because I haven't mentioned on this channel, I don't think, that I am an enormous Tudor nerd. My son tried to outdo me on the Tudors and was like, no, that's not right, because I was like, excuse me, you cannot out-Tudor me. So enjoy that review coming up. yeah, I hope to read a bit more, although life continues to be very busy. I would love to know, what are you reading? Have you read any of these? What would you recommend? Have you had any like real brilliant books? Particularly, I like non-fiction, environmental stuff, true stories, pregnancy stuff, breastfeeding thing. That's my jam. So if you've read anything in those kind of worlds, let me know, or just any great books. And if you've read any of these, I'd love to know your opinions. My link to Goodreads is below if you want to follow as I read them, and I think that's it. Thanks for watching, and yeah, here's to some more reading. Creaky chair again. Take care.